reading of Eat Reading Art, and I hear that some of your design students at WCCC had some questions for you, so I just wanted to sit down and ask you some of those questions. All right, Susan, so my first question for you today is, what made you want to open your own business?
I didn't necessarily set out to open my own business. It was just that I started making money and I knew that Uncle Sam was going to want his share and needed to do things legally, so that led to opening a business.
Well, that's very interesting that that wasn't a part of your plan, and that leads me into my next question, which is, how did you know that being an illustrator is what you wanted to do?
Well, there again, I didn't necessarily set out to be an illustrator, and actually, I never dreamt of being an illustrator. However, I've been drawing my entire life, and I will draw whether I get paid for it or not. And so it just seemed to be, there again, just kind of stumbling in that direction.
All right, so in saying that illustration wasn't necessarily part of your plan, I know that you do have a degree in graphic communications, so what kind of drove you into graphic communications as opposed to illustration?
All right, so I've been drawing pictures my entire life, and while I was doing so, my parents strongly discouraged me from going into illustration because they claimed that there were starving artists everywhere and they didn't want to produce another one. Then later in life, whenever I decided to go to school to study, I wanted to study something that I'd have fun with. And if I couldn't study art because there wasn't a need for starving artists, I knew graphic designers, could make a decent living. So that is why I chose to have my major in graphic communications.
I can definitely relate and understand your decision in going into graphic communications. Because similarly, my parents did not want me to become a starving artist, so when I went to college to study, I knew that there was nothing I would rather do other than art, so I kind of just jumped into graphic design blindly, and I have no regrets about that, because, similarly, graphic designers have a style, just like illustrators, painters, interior designers, all designers, and illustration is part of graphic design. Just because, graphic design is more digital doesn't mean that you're not working a lot on paper. It doesn't mean that you can't learn new ways to illustrate. For example, digital painting, that was a big one for me. That being said, how did you settle on your niche of illustrating children's books instead of other items like logos or posters or any of the other things?
Oh, so whenever I was in school, a wise sage once told me to choose 1, 2, or 3 disciplines and get good at them and become an expert and make bank. Well, when I graduated, I needed to earn a paycheck, so I took every piece of artwork that came across my desk, and therefore I had a ton of experience in a lot of things. It just so happened that whenever I got overwhelmed with a large amount of work, I needed to start weeding it out and deciding what it was that I truly loved the most, and that has definitely proved to be the children's books.
Well, that sounds so amazing and very cool. My next question for you is, what are some obstacles you faced while growing in your career?
I would say the biggest obstacles would be time management and communication. Time management is always a struggle, especially in my circumstances. I have a family, I have the maintenance of the building and just a lot of responsibility. I also, as a creative, get distracted easily, so that's hard on time management as well. Communication also, in that I have a girlfriend whose email signature says the biggest facade in communication is to think that it took place, because we think we're getting across what is on our mind or in our hearts, and we actually find out later that we didn't do a good job. So those are pretty hard obstacles to overcome in everyday life, not just in the studio.
I can definitely relate to the time management being an issue. I know personally I tend to get a project and underestimate the amount of time it'll take to do something. For example, I think something's going to take 2 to 3 hours. 5 hours later, it's 2 a.m. and I'm still not done. And it was all because I underestimated the time and really didn't give myself enough time to fully flesh out the project that I was working on, or account for the time it takes to go in and modify and make details.
There's always something that...
Yeah, and then a lot of times there's something that you forget.
Yes.
And then you remember last minute and think, oh, if I had just, given myself more time. So that was definitely probably, I still struggle with that, but in college that was definitely my biggest issue with getting projects done. Let's see. My next question for you is, have you had any failures, and how have those failures helped you grow? And is there anything that you have regretted not doing related to your career?
Failures and regrets. All right, so failures, I would say that anytime someone's not 100% off the charts satisfied, that's going to break my heart. But you realize that there's a chance that that's going to happen just because we aren't perfect people. I do recall a project that I took on, and this is where I learned that communication is so huge. This was the first instance of communication. I'd taken on typesetting and laying out of a book that ended up being a novel, and the workload was much greater than what I was capable of handling. And I realized that, okay, this is definitely not going as I anticipated, and communication would have been better. So now my question is, how many pages are we laying out? How big are we going to go? As far as regrets, that's a hard one, because I did have a client that was not happy with the turnaround time just recently, but I can't regret because it was due to a family illness, a serious family illness, and my need to be there for my family. And so I can't regret that, but it does always break my heart to disappoint.
What are some of your favorite projects that you've gotten to work on, and what is one of the biggest projects that you've gotten to work on?
So favorite project, I don't know if I really have a favorite, because they all tend to have some kind of challenge involved. And when you meet that challenge, I don't want to say you're proud of yourself, but you feel a sense of accomplishment for sure. Anything drawing and painting is definitely right up there, but I also enjoy the process of creating a logo or a t-shirt design, and I enjoy laying out of the children's books as well, and thinking of all the creative details that can go into that design. So probably whatever project I'm working on currently is my favorite. As far as the largest project, oh goodness, I didn't do it myself, thank goodness for that, but a church in Mount Pleasant had asked me to paint a 700 square foot mural. And there again, I didn't have to do it alone, and I was quite grateful for that. But the mural's still there and still hopefully enjoyed by children. It gets added to by different artists ever so slowly, but it was a lot of fun.
My next question for you is, was it hard applying what you know and making it work with what you do from the classes that you took while you were at WCCC?
No, I was able to transition from taking what I learned in school and applying it to business right off the bat. It was pretty fluent.
Okay, so kind of jumping off of this page for a second, I do have a question myself. What kind of advice would you give a soon-to-be graduating or recently graduated design student who is struggling to find the best way to exemplify their talents to firms or clients in general, whether that be freelancing or for a design firm or anything of the sort? Because I know personally I struggled with this a lot, and I feel like it's something that is almost hard to just like teach yourself. So yeah, what would you give advice for?
So I would advise students to be determined, to continually to knock on doors, asking for skills that need to be acquired in order to get a position somewhere or to continue to freelance. Networking is huge. Completing work for nonprofits, that can get your name out there. Post on social media. Networking is really big. It helps that I grew up in this community. I was active and involved in churches and in the communities and sports, not only for myself but for our children, and so you just end up gaining a large network, and that has helped tremendously. But determination and the willingness to continually to improve and to grow is really, don't give up, just keep at it.
My next question is, did you work for any design groups before starting your own business, and how did you transition from working for somebody to being your own boss?
I did not work for another corporation, so there wasn't much of a transition. I did do an internship. It was part of the requirements in order to graduate. I met some great people. I learned some fantastic skills. I still am friends with those people today. But as far as transitioning from corporate life to freelancing, I truly pretty much only know freelancing.
How do you approach working with a client that is either aggressively critical or has problems picking things and is more whatever looks good in their responses?
Aggressively critical, that might be a little bit too harsh, but I have had some difficult clients. I had one client be particularly difficult. It was early in my career, and she probably sensed that I was new and didn't have the experience. And you just have to take all that with a grain of salt. Learn from it. Know that they're not dictating your identity. You know who you are, and you know what you can do. And I just encourage you to be secure in that. And as you grow and mature, and the more you work, the more secure you'll feel in that. As for the client that has a hard time picking things out, that's a good reason that I charge an hourly rate so that I'm able to cover that. And
Have you ever taken a trip to the botanical gardens for inspiration with drawing different flowers than the ones you grow?
oh my, of course. Let's see, FIPS at least once a year, if not 2 or 3, Longwood Gardens, and Nemours, different gardens up in the Brandywine area, Washington Oaks in Florida, or Cypress Gardens. There's just a long list of, if I'm somewhere and there's a garden, Hershey Gardens, been there several times, the beautiful rose gardens there. If I'm somewhere and there's a garden, I'd like to enjoy it, even if it's your garden. I can draw inspiration from wherever I'm at.
All right, so to wrap up, I think the last question I have here is, how has graphic design impacted your life so far?
Graphic design has certainly impacted my life as a way to take my creativity and put it to use. Like I said, I drew pictures all my life, I painted all my life, and graphic design gave me a place to put that artwork, and it just brought me a lot of joy. It has brought me a lot of satisfaction. I've met some great people. I've gotten to do fun things, and it also has brought an income. So it has definitely been a wonderful thing for me.
So that is all the questions that I have. I just want to say, thanks for sitting down, chatting with me, answering all these questions. I've learned a lot, and I hope that your students have also taken a lot of really good advice out of this chat. And yeah, thank you for letting me be a part of this project.
Thanks, Victoria, for coming and helping us with this project.